Kentucky doesn't have the third or the second best backcourt in the country. It's the best. And I'm going to tell you why on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, I'm going to tell you why Kentucky has the best, that's right, the best backcourt in all of college basketball. Also on today's episode, we're going to talk about the depth of this backcourt. It's not just the 1-2 punch at the top, it's the depth. And then to wrap up the show, Evan Miya has written a post explaining how exactly he goes about his preseason rankings. I want to explain his thoughts, explain my thoughts about his thoughts, and tell you why I think Kentucky's ranked 10th in the country, at least according to Evan Miya. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if their bet wins, they'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show, and if you're listening on podcast, I would also love it if you subscribe there as well. We got a new influx of people listening on audio, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, I think Kentucky has the best backcourt in all of college basketball this season. It's not the second, it's not the fourth, it's not somewhere in the top 10, just kind of meandering around. I think that this is the best backcourt, not just in the conference, but in the country. Hoops HQ recently did an article breaking down their top backcourts in America, and they had Purdue number 1. They had Houston number 2, and then they had Kentucky number 3. I think that Kentucky's backcourt, not just their 1-2 punch at the top, but again, their depth is better than what the Cougars or the Boilermakers could provide. Let's walk through this here real quick. Let's talk about Purdue for a second. Braden Smith might be the best player returning in the country. 8.7 assists per game. He's also giving you almost 16 a night. Fletcher Loyer also is almost giving you 14 points per game. They've got some depth here in CJ Cox, Harris, Omar Mayer is a 6'4" freshman guard. They've got Antoine West Jr., a freshman who's almost a top 150 prospect. Obviously, Braden Smith is carrying the heavy load here, but also you have to give some credit to Loyer, who's one of the better shooters in America. That's a really good 1-2 punch. The depth there scoring-wise, I'm not exactly as fired up about as Kentucky, which again we'll get to in a second. Houston, Emmanuel Sharp, 12.5 points per game. Milos Uzan, 6'4", almost 12 points a night. Mercy Miller is going to be here as a sophomore guard. He's expected to take a bigger role. They've also got a ton of depth here. Cordelius Jefferson, Bryce Jackson, Kingston Flemings, Isaiah Harwell, who's a almost top 20 prospect. Both of those guys are, I should say. Cryer being gone sucks, but there's so much depth to this room that you cannot be not excited about what Houston is bringing here. But I don't necessarily think they have the firepower at the top that maybe Kentucky or Purdue does. And here's what I continue to come back to. With Jaland Lowe, the quote that Mark Pope had just a few weeks ago, quote, "He was our leading three-point shooter and field goal percentage shooter in 5-on-5 competition this summer, shooting from 3 just under 42%. We know the story. Last season, Jaland Lowe shooting less than 38% from the floor and less than 27% from 3. It was bad. He had an injury, a broken finger, that I think helped this poor inefficiency from him. Here's the thing, though. Let's take last season's stats, right? Almost like 17-ish a game, right? Or it was like 15, 16 a game with those poor shooting splits, the 5.5 assists, the almost 2 steals per game. If he takes the jump that he's had in practice shooting the ball, Jaland Lowe this season with last year's stats would have, at this point, 19.1 points per game. He'd be shooting 42.1% from the floor. If he was shooting 42% from 3 in practice, he'd be obviously shooting 42% from 3 here this year to go along with the 5.5 assists per game and the 1.8 steals per game. That is right there, 19 points, 5.5 assists, almost 2 steals while shooting 42% from three. That might be the best lead guard, full stop, in America. I understand how good Braden Smith is and how important he's going to be for that Purdue team. I understand how good Sharp is going to be for Houston. I think that Lowe, if he's shooting that well from three and providing that much to you outside of just pure scoring, that's the best lead guard in America. Full stop. Almost 20 a contest. Are you kidding me? Jaland will be incredible for Kentucky if he takes that a jump in efficiency. Even if it's not that big of a jump in efficiency, you're still probably going to get somewhere between 15 to 17 and a half-ish points out of Jaland. This is going to be a team that relies, I wouldn't say heavily, but pretty heavily on their backcourt when it comes to scoring the ball. Now, when it comes to a bunch of different other things, we can talk about defense, we can talk about rebounding, we can talk about on-ball defense, we can talk about a bunch of different things. But as far as scoring goes, I think that Jaland is going to have you locked down at point. And you pair him with the leading returning scorer on this roster who is giving you over 16 a night last year in Otega Oweh. If he gives you similar efficiency on similar volume, you'll get another 15 to 16 points per game added to this backcourt. Even if Jaland drops to 14 points a night, you're going to get somewhere between 15, 16, 17-ish maybe from Oweh. That's 30-plus points night in and night out from your starting backcourt. There is not a better 1-2 tandem in the country than Jaland Lowe and Otega Oweh. That's the main reason why Kentucky is going to be is going to have the best backcourt in America this season. And it's not just the scoring, right? It's the playmaking from Lowe. It's the improved playmaking from Oweh. It's the defense. It's the three-level scoring. It's a true offensive engine in Jaland, who takes a jump in efficiency, and an excellent scoring slasher beside him who's only getting better defensively. By the way, Oweh, third best defender on this roster last year behind Garrison and Amari Williams. This is the best 1-2 punch. Best 1-2 punch, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. This is the best backcourt, and people need to start realizing it. And it's not just the best 1-2 punch. I think the depth also really does impress here for Kentucky. Let's dive into that here in just a second. Before we do it, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, because caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most about 5 Hour Energy is just how portable it is. Big taste, tiny shot. I can take it anywhere and get that boost when I need it. If I want to go out on the town, if I want to go for a walk, if I want to go play golf with some buddies, if I want to go get some running at the gym playing basketball, I take it everywhere I go. The energy is incredible. It keeps me boosted throughout the day. And of course, I love the different flavors. Grape has been my pick the entire time, like the 4 years I've been doing this show. Grape is where it's at, and it's incredible here with 5 Hour Energy. I love how fast it kicks in. The fact that it's sugar-free as well is pretty sweet. I don't have to worry about crashing later. I can stay energized throughout the day. And it's enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine, right? It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Really appreciate you guys tuning into the show. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. We're talking about why Kentucky has the best backcourt in the country. I think it's pretty obvious to me that Jaland Lowe and Otega Oweh are going to be the best 1-2 punch in America. And look, the efficiency is one thing, right? With Jaland, even if he does end up dropping to 14-ish points, which I really do think is his floor here, you're still getting nearly 30 a night, most of the time over 30 a night from your starting 1 and 2. Then you get into the depth, and I think that really helps Kentucky's case here. Let's start with the secondary playmaker in Denzel Aberdeen. I have talked over and over and over and over again this offseason about how I think Denzel in this secondary playmaker role in this offense will be perfect for Kentucky. The efficiency was not mind-blowing at Florida. It wasn't bad, by the way. It was actually slightly above average to average in terms of shooting, in terms of spot-up scoring. He was really inefficient off the dribble, but let me tell you what Denzel's not going to be doing. He's not going to be shooting a ton of shots off the dribble for Mark Pope. He's going to be playmaking, and he's going to be scoring and spot-up and catch-and-shoot opportunities. He's better than what Kentucky had defensively last year at guard, and he's going to be able to provide some value in a variety of areas. Athletically, again, playmaking, passing the ball around. Kentucky is already working him into that secondary point guard role behind Jaland. I really like this addition for Kentucky, not just because of what he brings you stat-wise and how he fits into this offense, but also you've got the experience on top of that. A lot of people question, well, how valuable is experience really? Is it just kind of a buzzword, a talking point, something that pundits like myself say whenever you get into the deep offseason and you don't really have anything to talk about when it comes to complimenting these guys? Now, I really do think that experience matters here, not just because he's been playing ball for a while, but he's been doing it for 4 years now in this league. 3 years at Florida, heading into his 4th season in the SEC. I think Aberdeen's experience in this conference against opposing coaches, against opposing players, with this team now that he's been playing against for 3 years, I think that this is a great spot for Kentucky to be in with their backup point. And then you get deeper into this depth and you get even more excited. Colin Chandler, who wasn't the most efficient offensively, if you just look at the raw box stats from last year, right? But you go and look at what he was doing the final 9 games of the season, shooting the ball incredibly well from 3. He's a really solid off-ball defender. He's the 4th best defender on this roster last year. Kentucky's trying to make him into a 3rd option at point guard, which I think gives him more versatility in his role here, right? Great jump shooter. Really good, off-ball defender, I should say, not on-ball, off-ball defender. Can play make a little bit now that Kentucky's trying to get him into that mold. And I think he's a great athlete on top of this. You see what Kentucky's posting on social media about him, throwing down reverse dunks and stuff. This kid's got an insane highlight package from high school. Colin Chandler is a really explosive, high-ceiling type guy that you have coming off the bench here in his 2nd year in college. And he's also an experienced player in terms of just how long he's been around the game at this point now, 22 years old, almost 23 years old, and he's heading into his sophomore season. I'll take that any day of the week, especially if he's going to provide the value that he's got from 3. So Aberdeen and Chandler are 2 guys that I'm really excited about here, and the depth just keeps coming. You add a freshman from Tulane that's 6'8", excellent range, great frame, solid athlete, might end up being the best cutter on this team. We'll see how that works out. Let's monitor that. 103.8 defensive rating is at average or slightly below average in college basketball, but he would have been the 3rd best defender on this roster a year ago. With the way that Kentucky is emphasizing defense this offseason through practice, through what they're saying to the media, Cam, I think, is going to be one of those people that you look at halfway through the year and saying, okay, he's got to have some sort of minute share on this roster because of how valuable he is on both ends of the floor, not just as a plus 40% shooter from 3, which he was as a freshman at Tulane a season ago, but because of what he brings you defensively at that wing spot. Again, at 6'8" with a great wingspan, you have to be able to put Cam out there and match him up against some guys in the SEC that are going to be at his size and can handle the ball and can play make at that position. So Cam, I think, is a really solid player that will contribute well to this roster. How versatile he is on the offensive end, I'm not quite sure, but I think he's a really solid pickup, and he can only do good for this team as he continues to develop here. Keep in mind, guys, he's not some experienced mid-major player that you're going to get like Antonio Reeves or somebody like that. This is a kid that has only spent 1 year in college ball. So it's going to take a little bit, I think, to kind of get him up to speed here when it comes to playing at this Power 4 level against the SEC, against tougher competition in the non-con. Kentucky, I think, will get him there, though. Absolutely. And then the 4th player here, somebody that I think might end up being, not this year, maybe down the line, the most explosive scorer in all of college basketball, and Jasper Johnson. The catch and shoot efficiency will go nuts here with Jasper this season. He will be, probably, in catch and shoot situations, the best shooter on this roster. He's not a Kobe Bryant type. He's not an Ainsley Almanor type. But whenever you get this kid a drive and kick and a fast break on the wing, he's going to knock it down. I think you are going to see him thrive primarily scoring in these catch and shoot, sometimes spot up situations where he can create a little bit and drive into the lane and finish at the rim. I think that Jasper is limited in the value that he can provide as a whole this year as a freshman, trying to add on weight, trying to be more physical, trying to learn as much as he possibly can. Reports are saying that he's one of the hardest, if not the hardest worker on this roster. I really like Jasper as a long-term prospect, but this year, the value that he can provide just as a scoring threat off the bench, I think will be really good for Kentucky. To be honest with you guys, Jasper is the fourth player that we're talking about here off the bench, essentially sixth in this rotation that I've broken down here in this guard rotation. Just shows how incredibly deep Kentucky is, by the way, with 9+ points from Aberdeen from Florida, with Colin, I think, taking a jump in points per game, with Cam, I think, being able to provide you some value scoring the ball, with Jasper, obviously, that being his calling card. Jasper might end up being the fourth or even third most valuable guard on this roster by the time all is said and done next March. I really do think he is that good at putting the ball in the hole, and we'll see. I am fired up about the depth that this team has just as a whole. So that's why I think Kentucky's got the best backcourt in the country. It's the 1-2 punch of Oweh and Jaland. It's also the depth here. It's the guy from Florida. It's the guy from Tulane. It's the 5-star freshman. And it's Colin Chandler, who I think is going to be able to take a step forward. And they're trying to make him more of a leader, more of somebody that can make that next step and adding versatility to his game. So I love what Kentucky's got here in their backcourt. The front court, you've heard the reports about how Kentucky's trying to make it the best in the nation. I believe KSR actually put an article out about that whenever Coach McLean has been talking about how Kentucky's trying to make that the best front court in America with JQ, with Brandon Garrison, about how they're trying to get BG to be more of a leader to Marino and Potter and JQ whenever he's out there. But I really do think we need to start to give this backcourt their flowers here, because they're probably going to carry the way for this Wildcats team, at least on one end of the floor. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree this is the best backcourt in the country or not? I think it is. I absolutely do. All right. I want to talk about how Evan Mia has released an article breaking down how his preseason rankings are going to work. Should Kentucky be rated 10th in the nation? Should some other teams, some other rivals, be rated as highly as they are? We're going to dive into that here in just a second. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every single missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works through an app on your phone or your computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator, juggling everything, or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedon in college. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is obviously here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many different ways to play. I've built parlays, I've thrown down some player props, I've even followed live during the games because sometimes I just want to keep action on my fantasy football lineup. Keeps weekends interesting. Whether you're a casual fan or you really love diving into the stats like myself, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much more fun. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app today. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of the show. Really appreciate you guys checking it out. Again, if you have not subscribed, would love it if you did so. By the time you guys are looking at this end of day, we've probably passed 18,000 subscribers, which I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed up until this point. This has been incredible to get to cover this team for you guys, to get to kind of break down games and portal stuff and stats and talk about what's going on with the Wildcats, and I really do appreciate it. I love it so much. Thank you guys so much for everyone that watches every day, for you everydayers out there. And if you're new, subscribe. It's going to be a really fun season. We are less than a month out from the exhibition against Purdue. Of course, we'll have a preview for you whenever that game gets closer. We'll be talking about more of the preseason stuff here as we get closer and closer to the start of it. I'll give you different rankings for players. I'll give you preseason predictions for the team. I'll tell you how far I think they're going to go in the tournament. I'll tell you who I think is going to be the MVP. We'll break it all down here as we get closer and closer. But first, preseason ratings. Everybody loves them, right? Everybody and their mother loves a good old preseason rating here for college basketball. We talk bracketology, we talk KenPom, we talk Hasla, we talk Evan Miya, and today we're going to take a look back at Evan Miya, who has written down a blog post breaking down how he exactly goes about his preseason ratings. Now, we've talked a little bit about his ratings before already on the show. Kentucky's 10th. They're projected to have a better defense than offense. I believe at 9th best defense, 16th best offense. You could kind of pick your spots here and there about how you feel about this team analytically, but there feels like, or at least there felt like, there was some shift towards Mark Pope and how good he is as a coach and what happened last season. There was some weight put on that, I should say, as far as this preseason rating goes for Kentucky, because if you look at the way that Evan Miya values the players on this roster, it's not necessarily the most high-profile roster in the nation. Once you get into some of this depth, ranking these players nationally, he's got them as the 8th most talented roster in America, but whenever you go and look at the actual individual players, there's not a ton there in the top 200-ish. In fact, it kind of trails off pretty quickly after you get past the first 5 guys. So what exactly is the methodology? Well, he wrote it down in a blog post, and here's how it's formulated according to him. Roster strength, projected roster strength, team performance in previous seasons, and roster continuity. He says roster strength, projected roster strength, is by far the most important one. Each player on the roster has a projected, I think it's Bayesian, I believe, performance rating for the season, which estimates how impactful a player will be on a per-possession basis during the season. There is also an associated minutes prediction model that gives a rough estimate of what a team's rotation would look like. Combining all roster players, projected BPR with predicted minutes gets an estimate of the team's overall roster strength based on personnel. You can see each team's roster rank column on the team ratings page, obviously. And then Kentucky, again, has the 8th strongest roster in America. I think part of this has to do with less of a, okay, what do we think about the depth here from a raw numbers perspective, and more of an, okay, what do we think about this depth from a watch these guys in the film and think about how they're going to be active in Pope's system, which is not necessarily, I would say, the most analytical model thinking, but it really does feel like after you look at the way these players are ranked on this website, that there is something being poured into what Mark Pope is as a coach and what happened last season with Kentucky with some of these players. Depth, I think, is the key for success this year, and Evan Miya, just from a raw numbers perspective right now, doesn't know what to make of Cam Williams, what it needs to make of Andrea Yelovich, Jasper Johnson, Colin Chandler. They don't really have a lot to go off of, and if they do, it's not very good, right? Across the board in terms of like high-profile quality depth. So that's the first thing, is roster strength. Team performance in previous seasons is the second. Evan says, although this is much less of a factor in teams' preseason projections, it still does play an important role. Teams that often outperform their projected roster strength in past seasons are likelier to do so in future years. Teams with coaching changes are also handled differently from teams with returning coaches. Based on my analysis, when a team changes coaches, their next season's performance correlates very little with how they fared in the previous year. Roster strength is crucially important in these cases. So this is where Kentucky gets their 10th overall rating. Right here in the Evan Miya preseason projections. Team performance in previous seasons. Teams that often outperform their projected roster strength in past seasons are likelier to do so in future years. No duh here with Mark Pope. You might not necessarily have the strongest roster in America when it comes to everybody past your top 5, which again, I think that Miya has wrong. I think that he has like BG as like the second most valuable player on this roster. Jaland is ranked pretty low. We'll see how it all shapes out. Again, it's a preseason analytical model. I'm sure things will change as the season gets underway. But this is why Kentucky is inside the top 10. It's because of what Mark Pope did last year with the hodgepodge of a roster that he threw together in a month and a half that he took this to the Sweet 16. No disrespect to those guys, all of which I think played their role very well for Kentucky. No duh, there's a reason why they beat so many top 15 teams. It's just that now things look a little different, and now that you have shown that you can do that with that type of roster, you've got a better one this year, okay, we're going to bump you up even higher. The final thing here is roster continuity. Teams with a higher percentage of returning minutes from the previous season are often slightly better than teams with a lot of roster turnover. This doesn't play a huge role, according to Evan, but it does move the team projections slightly, he says. He also added an estimate of each team's percentage of minutes that will be played by returning players, since his previous study on roster construction shows that teams who build their rotation more around returning players are more successful than teams with lots of newcomers, even with comparable roster strength. So, Kentucky at number 10, Illinois at number 9, BYU at number 8, Arizona at number 7, which is interesting, UConn at number 6, Michigan at number 5, Florida at number 4, Duke at number 3, Purdue at number 2, and Houston at number 1. I don't think that UConn should be rated as the 6th best team in the nation, but again, this is a computer model. This is not a human. I don't think that I don't think that Michigan should be rated that high at number 5, but again, this is a computer model. It's not my projection. I think that Duke does deserve, to be rated as a top 5 team in the nation, despite what some humans are saying, so I do agree with that. And Evan Mia goes into a little bit more detail why Houston and Purdue are leading the pack. Duke sits at 3rd, which might surprise some people, but they're still going to be pretty good. He's optimistic about Michigan, which is interesting. Illinois at number 8 is pretty optimistic. They might be more special than that. Ohio State is number 18 in this top 25, which is a team that ran Kentucky out of the gym in MSG last year. That's a really good backcourt that they have there. Returning is a big-time thing for them. Vanderbilt is number 25. Should they be rated that high? I'm not quite sure. They lost some pieces, but they've recruited very well this offseason with a very good coach. Mississippi State is ranked pretty high at number 27 because Josh Hubbard is incredible. He is the only guard in the country with a projected points per 100 possessions of over 34, while maintaining a projected turnover percentage of under 2.5. Josh Hubbard would look really good in blue and white at some point down the road. That's probably not going to happen, but he would. Cincinnati at number 28, I disagree with. Even Evan says that that's scary. Miami is top 40 here. St. John's, who Kentucky's going to play, is number 13. That's a little lower than some AP preseason rankings might suggest. And then the lowest here that I am shocked by is Louisville. Louisville is number 19. 19 in Evan Mia's preseason ratings. And here's what he has to say. They have a very impressive roster, ranked 6th best in the country. However, the expectations are that Pat Kelsey will be just as tremendous in year 2 as he was with an injury-laden roster in his first year at the helm. I certainly think this is a strong possibility, but my model is a little more skeptical. Some of this pessimism can probably be attributed to the Cards finishing outside the top 20 last year, but this could be easily excused due to all the injuries the team dealt with. A lot of injuries for Louisville, no doubt. I think that defensively, they're going to have some growing pains, I should say, especially in the front court. But offensively, this should be a much improved team from a season ago. The fact that they are rated this low, 9 spots behind Kentucky, is a little shocking to me. Just considering how high humans are on this team because of how talented that backcourt truly is, with Conwell and Brown and McNeely and all those guys, right? It's interesting how Kentucky here is the 2nd best team in the SEC behind Florida at number 4, and then it's Tennessee, it's Bama. You don't see Arkansas until you get down to number 21. Auburn is at number 20, I believe, because Bruce Pearl stepped down. It actually bumped Auburn down to number 25. I think that Evan tweeted out about that. And you've got Vanderbilt again at 25, Mississippi State at 27, Missouri at number 30. A lot of really good teams in the pack here at the SEC, but it's clear, at least to me preseason, this conference is not as good as it was a season ago. Kentucky's going to have a lot better of an opportunity to kind of be a more difficult opponent, especially on the road, because of what they're going to present defensively. the analytical models say that Kentucky's going to be better. Like all of them do. Torvik does. Evan does. I'm really interested to see what KenPom says, because last year KenPom was super low on Kentucky preseason. So it's very interesting how Evan does his stuff. Should Kentucky be rated 10th? I think they should be rated 10th or higher, possibly. I like where they're at. But again, I'm a human. I'm not a computer, I should say. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK, follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.